EU nations may close their borders to US travelers as they seek to reopen their economies to tourism because of how Washington has handled the pandemic.
Here's a summary of the article.
EU nations may close their borders to US travelers as they seek to reopen their economies to tourism because of how Washington has handled the pandemic, The New York Times reported Tuesday, citing unnamed European officials. One official involved in talks among European Union members about who should be allowed to visit the bloc shared draft lists of acceptable travelers. Americans were not on them. A second official involved in the talks confirmed the lists, which have not been made public, and two others confirmed their content. It was not clear if U.S. officials were made aware in advance of the fact that Americans would be excluded when the EU progressively reopens to those outside the bloc from July 1. The officials interviewed by The Times said the United States could later be added to the list of acceptable travelers if the country's coronavirus case numbers drop. EU countries have largely been closed to all non-bloc citizens, except in cases of essential travel, since mid-March. Spikes in infection rates in several U.S. states have worried European officials about the possibility that travelers could spark a second wave of infections on the continent.
This post received a score of 41,000, with an upvote ratio of 90%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Greater than as well as Brazilians and Russians.
And probably a lot more, especially South American countries. This was just the first draft, not an official document.
For a non-US source to be reporting this as a US-only thing borders on clickbait.
It's a non-US source reporting on US sources. For which it makes sense, I guess, to be US-centric. It is clear in the original title. Why they would report it like that, however, does kind of sound like clickbait. Yeah. I was made aware that the editorialized didn't mean exact same title as the source. First part of the comment still stands.
Greater than, but yeah, the title of the post doesn't correspond to the article, which is against sub-rules. If this was actually followed, this subreddit would be empty.
It's not even a rule here. Politics has an exact title rule but not world news.
Dunno, here in Netherlands it doesn't seem that pandemic is taken as seriously as people think it is. I was studying abroad when the pandemic hit in Thailand, and everywhere people wore masks. To enter stores you had to have mask, the temperature was measured pretty much anywhere, and per capita, cases were extremely low for the congested city of Bangkok. Then I returned to the Netherlands, and I feel like the only fool with the mask on here, yet per capita cases are way higher here. The policymakers seems to have done a lot, and having masks for everyone is probably much harder here because of individualism and no pre-existing mask culture and lesser production capacity, therefore other means of pandemic suppression are used.
Asian countries already have a culture of wearing masks to protect other people from their illness. Western countries would do well to pick this one up even if we're not as densely populated.
I'd settle for people not coming into work obviously sick and infecting is all. That always bothered me.
It's just a flu, I'll just man up and go to work. 1 week later everyone is sick. Shit annoys me to no end. Edit, for people in my country, there is the right to sick leave. I can understand the situation might be a little more difficult elsewhere, but for us there is no excuse to infect others when you can just stay home and still get paid. Yet people still choose to go to work and spread the flu around out of a misguided sense of duty, pride or whatever else. I work in a restaurant though. And while the whole "I'll just man up and work" thing definitely happens, more often than not it's more of a "if you don't come in, you don't have a job" type of thing. I've worked in the restaurant industry for 20 years and if you had any idea how often the cooks, servers, bartenders were working while obviously extremely sick, you'd never eat at a restaurant again.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.